It has been recorded in history that the first Americans were natives. They got to America by traveling across a land bridge from Asia to North America, formed by glaciers. After the glaciers started to melt, the land bridge from Asia to North America had disappeared due to sea rising levels. The natives developed a crop called maize, also known as corn. It helped prevent gatherings for hunting, and it fed the starving people. Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492. He thought that the achievements of the Native Americans were very unimportant. This, in my opinion, is a very arrogant statement. Chapter 2. The Virginia Company was ordered by King James I. His orders were to go find a new settlement in the New World. So Captain John Smith and his men traveled from England all the way to Jamestown, Virginia. They then anchored in the James Bay. Conflict arose between the colonists and the natives due to land ownership issues. Jamestown, Virginia was the founder of the crop of tobacco. Tobacco is a very high-paying crop that caused greed and jealousy. The most important part for the growth of tobacco is land. Chapter 3. In 1517, Martin Luther came up with 95 Theses, which he then later nailed to the door of the Wittenberg Cathedral. During this religious crisis, King Henry VIII was breaking his ties with the Holy Roman Catholic Church. This led to the formation of the Puritans. Puritans were also known as Pilgrims. They believed that they needed to purify the Church of England. Chapter 4. After the arrival of the Europeans to the New World, disease began to spread to the natives. This caused death and illness. Diseases like typhoid, malaria, and dysentery caused many deaths. So many deaths that people would only live to either age 40 or 50. The crop of tobacco was getting more and more popular, to where the tobacco economy shot up. It got to a point where Chesapeake Bay was exporting 1.5 million pounds of tobacco nationwide. As the tobacco rate went up, so did slaveries. Slaves were being mistreated. By 1790, slaves were living on plantations where women were expected to spin, weave, and sew. Chapter 5. In contrast to Europe, the United States was a land that offered many people opportunities, such as jobs. As long as you were willing to put in hard work and labor, a job you would receive. As people began to work more, social classes began to emerge. These classes included rich farmers, merchants, officials, and clergymen. Clergymen gained most of the power due to economic reasons because money equals power. Chapter 6. The Ohio Valley became a huge battleground for the Spanish, the French, and the British. In 1754, George Washington was in command of 150 Minutemen. He was only 21 years old. About 40 miles away from Camp Dongxi, Washington and his men encountered some Frenchmen. They immediately opened fire. In retaliation, French soldiers surrounded Camp Necessity and forced Washington and his men to surrender. This is what led to the French and Indian War, also known as the 7 Years' War. Chapter 7. After the 7 Years' War, Britain was in huge debt. The British people believed that the United States should have to pay for at least 1/3 of the cost, because the Redcoats were used as protection for America. The Sugar Act of 1964 and the Quartering Act of 1965 was placed to raise money for military forces. Chapter 8. After the bloodshed of Lexington vs. Concord, 20,000 Minutemen surrounded Boston. The Minutemen outnumbered the British.